So, you're at NRA protest across the street from the convention center. What are you here to say?
Well, I'm sort of pro-sanity to sort of try and counteract the insanity across the street. So,
And what does that look like?
what does across the street look like?
The insanity across the street.
Well, it's a bunch of folks that would like to have everybody have a gun, and any kind of gun. And as I was talking to a gentleman over here, they say that if you restricted weapons, only criminals would have guns. Well, in my opinion, I would like to narrow it down to criminals so that I wouldn't have to worry about getting shot by my honest neighbor.
So you'd like it to be that only criminals have guns?
That would narrow it down to a very low percentage, yes, and then we could just concentrate on that.
What about the police?
Well, the police, yes, but I'm afraid, right. I have a friend that lives next to a policeman. He's more afraid of police than he is of criminals.
So it says, close the loopholes, assholes, okay?
Where are you from?
I'm from England.
Assholes.
Yeah. Okay. Assholes. Okay, well, either way.
I know.
So the loopholes are what?
The loopholes allow, at the gun shows, for people to buy guns without a background check.
Okay.
At gun shows.
And regardless of how one pronounces it, the assholes are...
The assholes are the NRA.
The NRA, okay. Now, from where I'm standing, that sounds like a sort of total anti-gun. You know, there are a lot of people who say that the National Rifle Association goes too far in the sorts of weapons that it would allow, and with concealed carry laws. But you seem to be saying you don't want any private citizen to own any guns.
But I would like rules against armored piercing rounds.
But hang on.
I think the police would like that too.
But just to go back, you said that only the criminals would have the guns, and so if that were true, then no civilian would have any gun, right?
Well, that's true. That's sort of an ideal point. I know that's not going to be the case. I'm being realistic, but.
Right. So you'd like to essentially repeal the Second Amendment completely?
No.
Oh.
We have it. I don't want to repeal it. I know it's not going to be done, but.
So it says more guns, more death.
Yeah.
You were just talking with this gentleman about universal background checks and so on. But the sign seems more sort of further along the road than that, if you see what I mean, in that universal background checks wouldn't necessarily reduce the number of guns, is the argument. It would just change who gets them. So do you want more than just the universal background check thing, or is there something else?
Well, the idea is in general to reduce the number of guns out there, and the way to accomplish that legally is to get them out of the hands of people who should not own them. Most gun owners are responsible people. You can't argue with that. It's a small percentage of bad apples that cause most of the trouble, and the idea is to use background check mechanism to identify the bad apples and make sure they can't get their hands on guns.
Okay.
Do you know we just had a 2-year-old killed by his 5-year-old brother?
No, I did see that. But you presumably wouldn't put those children through a background check.
The trailer trash that bought it for his 5-year-old ordered a rifle that looks like a toy but has real bullets in it.
Okay.
He ordered it, and he gave it to the 5-year-old, and the 5-year-old, of course, aimed it at somebody and shot the 2-year-old. I don't know if it was a brother or sister, it doesn't matter.
But what law would have stopped that?
What law would have stopped that? Maybe he shouldn't have had a gun in the first place.
The father?
Yes, or maybe if he did, he should have gotten instructions on what you do with a gun in the house with children. They're supposed to be locked up. That's a law.
Is it?
That's a law,
Okay.
yes.
Texans for smart gun regulation, which I presume means you're a Texan and you want smart gun regulation.
That's right.
What is a smart gun regulation?
Well, you can start with making sure you know who's buying the weapon, and whether or not they should own one.
Okay.
You can run a database of people with mental illness to make sure they don't have access to these weapons that can do ordinary people harm.
Right.
I think that's a pretty smart thing to do.
And then if you got that through, what would be next?
What would be next? Well, I'd like to see AR-15s come off the market.
Why?
Why do you need one? Unless you're going to shoot a theater full of people, why do you need one?
Okay, well, I mean, the question I would ask on that is, it's a semi-automatic rifle, which looks different than other semi-automatic rifles. So would you want to ban all semi-automatic rifles?
I'd want to ban anything where you can take out a room full of people without having to reload.
So a handgun.
Well, handguns. I mean, how many are talking in a clip? You know, maybe more than 10 bullets in a clip might be a little unreasonable. Okay, I understand that people want to own their weapons at home and defend themselves.
Yeah.
But who's defending themselves from a crowd of people?
Sure. But just to clarify, say that you had AR-15s and they limited magazine size to 10.
Uh-huh.
That would then be pretty much the same weapon as a handgun. It would just look different.
That's true.
So you'd need to get rid of both, really?
No, I think as long as you don't have the capability, like I said before, to take out, let's say, a theater full of people in Colorado,
yeah,
all at once by yourself, then I'd feel much more comfortable with that.
So that shooting of the children in Connecticut, the mother owned the guns,
right?
And she knew she had a son with mental problems. She knew this.
Yeah.
Everybody knew it. He was a loner. He sat in front of his computer and played gun, games.
Yeah.
And either she didn't have it locked up and threw away the key so he couldn't get it, or she didn't report it somehow or make it so he couldn't get the gun.
But just to play devil's advocate on that,
Sure,
I mean,
please.
She was obviously very irresponsible. And supposing that she broke the law in not locking it up, there was a law in place, perhaps, that said she had to, you suggest.
Yeah, maybe.
And she was irresponsible. I'm struggling to see what the law could have made, what difference the law could have made.
He was too ill to have guns.
But he didn't have one, is what I'm saying.
No, but she took him to firing ranges and he shot the guy.
But again, that's more of an indictment of her and her irresponsibility.
Oh, absolutely. Well, he killed her.
Yeah.
Hello.
Right.
I mean, what else does one have to say? But he killed her too.
He did. And so I'm just wondering what we could do about that. I mean, I understand she could have behaved better, but what could the state of Connecticut have done to us?
I don't know, but they've done more because they've passed other laws recently. The state of Connecticut has they have a activist governor.
They do.
They have been bombarded by the parents.
Yeah, I would take military weapons out of people's hands, and I would ban high capacity magazines. You don't need 20 rounds in your gun to shoot a deer, or if you do, you're a pretty bad shot. So you don't need 20 rounds in your weapon to shoot a deer or defend yourself in your home. You're just better off with a 20 gauge and four pump action 20 gauge and 4 or 5 rounds. Any self-respecting criminal, as soon as he hears that pump go, he's going to run like hell.
But then any self-respecting criminal is not going to obey magazine limitations and gun laws.
Doesn't matter. Honestly, they're not in there to kill you. They're in there to get your jewelry and your money. And if they hear your arm, they're gone.
Criminals aren't in there to kill you.
No. Most of them aren't.
But they will, right?
They will if they're confronted and they are armed.
So the argument is that people shouldn't be armed because then the criminals won't feel threatened.
No, the argument is in those situations you're better off with a 20 gauge pump action shotgun than you are with an AR-15.
So you said earlier you don't need military style weapons.
Right.
Why do you need a shotgun, and who would decide what one needs and what one doesn't?
Well, it's just I don't know how to explain that, but. Nobody's saying that you shouldn't be allowed to own a gun at all. Any law-abiding citizen should be able to own a self-defense weapon.
Right. But you said there are some that you need and some that you don't. I mean, Who decides that, and on what basis?
Oh, I don't know. That's all I know is it just makes common sense. You don't need a 20-shot Uzi to defend yourself, or an AR-15 to defend yourself in your home. That's just silly.
And if you had sort of one thing to say to people from the NRA,
no reasonable argument is what it should stand for. They want to tell you that we're trying to take their guns away. No one's doing that. There's no reasonable argument to what's actually going on.
But to play devil's advocate for a second, you did just say you'd like to get rid of AR-15s, which would be taking people's guns away.
I said I would be restricting the firing capacity of weapons that people can own their home,
Right.
not taking them away. No one wants to see an unarmed populace. What we want to see is a smartly armed populace
Right.
that cares about, their neighbors and their neighbors' children.
So you'd be taking away the magazines then?
Limiting the amount of bullets that you can fire without reloading, I think, is a smart thing to do.
Okay. All right.
Well, it's what's changed has been the targeting, if you will, that the people with guns have started going after children.
Right.
And this has just increased everyone's outrage. The
Yeah.
potential was always there. In a way, I always draw the analogy to the mafia. In the old days, they shot each other, but the families were off limits. But not anymore, and it's kind of the same way with the gun things now. People are going after children with
But I
these
presume
guns.
you wouldn't draw an analogy between gun owners and the mafia.
No.
Because the reason I mention it is because it might be true that the targets have changed, but surely that's not the gun's fault, it's people's fault. Whereas the mafia was inherently corrupt and wrong.